We now move on to the next business of the day, which is the 10-minute rule motion on doctors and nurses in developing countries. Mr. Andrew Mitchell.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to require the Secretary of State to report on the merits of a scheme for the United Kingdom to pay to train 2 doctors or nurses in developing countries for each doctor or nurse recruited to the National Health Service from those countries. I'm extremely grateful to you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for granting me this opportunity to make the case today for my bill, my first 10-minute rule bill since I was elected to the House 33 years ago. I am supported, Mr. Deputy Speaker, by a distinguished cross-section of members from both sides of the House. I believe this bill to be uncontroversial, but a genuine boost for the reputation of global Britain and the international values which this House supports, particularly ahead of the integrated review. I believe it builds on the past reputation of our country as an international development superpower. We were the first of the major developed countries to honour our promise to the world's poorest people to spend 0.7% of our gross national income as part of our mission to elevate the lives and social conditions of some of the most desperate people on the planet, people deprived not for any reason of their own, but because of where they were born. Mr. Deputy Speaker, one of the proudest moments of my political life was when the coalition government, in spite of the austerity which our country faced back in 2010, declined to balance the books on the backs of the world's poor and agreed to honour the 0.7 promise. I am still certain that chimes with the values and instincts of the vast majority of our fellow citizens, even at such a dreadful time as this for so many. Secondly, I want to emphasise how much we rely on those doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers who bring their talents and skills to this country to support our NHS from overseas. We respect them and we are hugely grateful to them. Indeed, if I may use a Second World War analogy, much beloved by some of my honourable friends, the heroes of this war against COVID are not, as in the Battle of Britain, the men and women of the Royal Air Force, but all too often workers from overseas working in our hospitals, giving their all in our care homes, putting themselves in harm's way, and often living on the minimum wage. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we persuade a doctor from the developing world to come here, we do so in the knowledge that our gain will inevitably be their country's loss. We have doctors, nurses, health workers and midwives in this country from Sierra Leone, 215 of them, from Nigeria, 4,099, from Pakistan, 3,394, from Ghana, 1,118, and from India, just short of 20,000. All these countries are developing nations with whom we have or have had a significant development partnership. But in exporting to us their doctors and clinicians, what I am describing is not aid from Britain to help developing countries. This is aid from those developing countries to help Britain. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is reverse aid, and it is clearly wrong. In Britain, we have 1 doctor for every 357 people, so effectively 3 doctors per 1,000. 15% of our nurses come from overseas, and around a quarter of our doctors. So what should we do about this dependence on doctors from overseas, and especially from the developing world, where we are effectively poaching their key public assets? First, we should grow more doctors and nurses here in the UK. The government have recognised this and increased the number of doctors trained here from 6,000 a year to 7,100 from 2017. It was particularly good to see that universities like Aston in Birmingham now run a foundation course, bringing more students from disadvantaged backgrounds into medicine. It is also right to recognise that it would be wrong for us to end the opportunity for those doctors in the developing world who wish to exercise freedom of movement. The House will be as shocked as I was to hear that not long ago there were more doctors trained in Sierra Leone practising medicine in Manchester than were practising medicine back in Sierra Leone, the country which had trained them. Now, we should not restrain their career opportunities by cutting off their ability to come here if they wish, and if we want them to do so. And so this is my key point, Mr. Deputy Speaker, working with the grain of human nature, doing the right thing, accepting our moral obligation to people much less fortunate than ourselves, but also meeting the needs of our citizens and ensuring they have the best possible health care. Why not do this? For every doctor or nurse we poach from a developing nation, we should ensure that that developing country, on losing their trained professional to our advantage, should receive from the existing British development budget sufficient resources to train up and replace them twice over. 2 for 1, Mr. Deputy Speaker. When we are lucky enough to secure such professionals from the developing world, we replace them twice over and expand their public health services accordingly. And remember these figures. In Britain, 1 doctor for 357 people. In Nigeria, 1 doctor for 2,753 people. In Sierra Leone, 1.4 doctors and nurses for every 10,000 people. And in Ghana, in the Upper East region, one of Ghana's poorest, a country with which Britain has a close historic relationship, there is 1 doctor for every 26,000 people. And all the time, these countries too are fighting COVID. Nigeria, 64,000 cases. Ghana, 49,000 cases. Sierra Leone, 2,385 cases. India has an estimated shortage of no less than 600,000 doctors and 2 million nurses. India, where Britain actively recruits doctors, has a doctor per 10,189 citizens and has 30% of all the world's acute child malnutrition. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the case we make to Parliament and the Government today is as follows. It is immoral and selfish for Britain, with its wealth and infrastructure, to poach doctors from the developing world. But by taking the action I have suggested, we can turn this into a win-win for us and for developing countries. It would not be right to fetter freedom of movement for those medical and health personnel who wish to come here and who we as a country wish to admit, and to whom we are truly grateful for bringing their skills to these shores. By replacing twice over the health service professionals who come here from developing countries, and with whom Britain has a close development partnership, Britain can help meet its own healthcare needs while providing additional healthcare capacity within those countries themselves. Mr. Deputy Speaker, on January the 1st, the UK takes over the chair of the G7 group of nations. At a time when the new US President is determined to reinvigorate the international rules-based system. At a time when this major pandemic has destroyed lives and livelihoods around the world. And when we know that COVID will not be beaten here until it is beaten everywhere, especially in countries with weak public health infrastructure. Britain's international development leadership and commitment to the 0.7 promise to the poor, Britain's example, has never been more needed. My bill will contribute to that leadership and to the international progress we so badly need.
Yeah. I've been given no indication at all that anybody wishes to oppose this 10-minute rule bill, and indeed I see nobody indicating that they wish to do so, so I will pose the question. The question is that the right honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many as that have been say aye. Aye. For the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Nicola Richards, Colonel Bob Stewart, the Right Honourable Dame Margaret Hodge, Sir Edward Lee, Jess Phillips, the Right Honourable Caroline Noakes, the Right Honourable Hilary Benn, Sir Robert Neal, Harriet Baldwin, Crispin Blunt, the Right Honourable Harriet Harman QC, and myself, sir.
Mr. Andrew Mitchell.
Doctors and Nurses Developing Countries Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday, the 8th of January 2021, Mr Deputy Speaker.
Friday the 8th of January 2021. Thank you very much.